Assalamualaikum and hi, we are from group number 5 and we will present our report which is inflation and unemployment in Australia. My name is Shaza Erdina binti Ismail and my ID number is 2021625448.
My name is Nazira binti Ibrahim and my student ID is 20215032.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Hazira binti Azam. My student ID is 2021458048.
My name is Nur Shazaliana Muhammad Shafi'i and my student ID is 2021616384. Firstly, I would like to introduce the background of the country. Australia is the biggest island nation on Earth and the smallest continent. It is in the southern hemisphere between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The nation's capital, Canberra, is in the southeast part of the country between the two biggest cities, which are Sydney and Melbourne. Australia has been called the oldest continent, the last of lands, and the last frontier. This statement shows how much the rest of the world loves Australia. Australia is also the best place to live because it has a high standard of life, a great education system, a strong economy, a diverse and safe environment, and beautiful natural scenery. Australia has a population of 26,396,792 people as of 14 June 2023, according to the most current estimates from the United Nations. This is a 1% increase from 2022. Australia has about 0.33% of the world's people. Australia has the 55th most people out of all the countries and regions in the world. The total land size is 7,682,300 square kilometers, which is about 2,966,151 square miles. In 2020, 21,903,705 people, or 85.9% of the population, will live in a city. Also, Australia has a normal age of 37.9 years, which is pretty young. Inflation or a rise in prices is a loss of purchasing over time. There are three main types of inflation, which are demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and built-in inflation. Firstly, demand pull inflation outlines how increased demand for the products and services can cause prices to rise. People will often pay more for something that is in scarce supply. Next, cost push inflation is the consequence of inputs in the production process experiencing price increases. When the price of raw materials goes up for a business, the business must raise prices, no matter how much the demand there is. Lastly, built-in inflation has to do with adaptable expectation, which is the perception that people think inflation rates will stay the same in the future.
Next is inflation issues. High inflation is corrosive and damaging. In Australia, the annual inflation rate increased to 5.35% in the mid of 2023, which is the second highest rate since 2014. Inflation is at its highest point in Australia in 33 years due to a combination of local and international conditions. For example, the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the blockage of gas and other exports, the lingering effects of stimulus measures during the pandemic, and the accumulation of savings in a significant number of Australian households. Thus, to decrease the inflation rate, it would require even higher interest rates and more unemployment to bring it back down if it were to persist. So, it would be dangerous to allow the current period of high inflation to continue. The board is resolute in its determination to do this by ensuring Australia's inflation returns to the 2 to 3% target range.
The above graph illustrates that Australia's annual inflation rate in 2014 was 2.49%. In 2016, the trend fell to 1.28% before rising by 0.72% the following year. In previous periods, the inflation rate in Australia increased dramatically, reaching a high of 6.62% in 2022 after having declined to 1.91% in 2018 and 1.59% in 2019. In 2023, the annual inflation rate fell back to 5.35%. A fall of 1.27% from the previous year. Customers' purchasing power is diminished when prices go up all over the places. Over time, the purchasing power of those who receive and pay fixed interest rates decreased owing to inflation. If inflation were higher and the borrower's income grew at the same rate, then the borrower would have no trouble paying payments. This obviously lowers the lender's real income. Some countries have even seen hyperinflation, where price increases average 1,000% each year. One of the worst cases of hyperinflation on record occurred in 2008 in Zimbabwe, where annual inflation was predicted to reach 500 billion%. According to Trade Economics, the highest rate ever recorded in Australia was 23.9% in 1951. Abandoning a national currency like Zimbabwe did, or other costly economic measures may be necessary for countries with extremely high inflation rates to bring inflation back down to sustainable levels. Recent inflation is partly due to changes in demand. Even though the worst of the health problem caused by the COVID-19 outbreak seem to have been fixed, the effects on the economy are still causing problems for countries around the world since they were low before the crisis. Inflation rates have gone up to all-time high. Inflations happen when the demands for goods and services is higher than the supply, which means that businesses can raise prices without worrying losing customers. The Australian Bureau of Statistics said that Australia's inflation rate has risen 7.8% in the year leading up to December, which was the highest rate since 1990. Inflation was also rising by 1.9% each quarter. During the pandemic lockdowns, people were much less likely to spend money on things like vacations and entertainment since interest rates were low, and so were the loan payment. In order to escape a depression-like situation, the Australian government injected money into the economy at the same time. Many countries around the world did something similar, but Australia's financial help was among the most generous in the world.
Next is effects of inflation. The first one is relating to housing affordability. This is because it will put pressure on families' finances when rental expenses is increasing, and there is no simple ways for the family to find a place to live. Second is increasing price in various types of product and services. For example, transportation has gone up to 15.1%, and education expenses are going up by 4.1%. Third is wages growth. Wages did not go up same with inflation. As a result, with the same amount of money, they can buy fewer things. Lastly, savings. People cannot afford their normal way of life because inflation forced them to spend their savings and cut their normal expenses. Next is how we want to overcome the inflation. The main tool used to tackle inflation is by increasing the cash rate. The cash rate is the interest rate which is banks pay to borrow funds from other banks in the money market, and it affects mortgage loans. By raising interest rates on credit products, consumers and businesses are less likely to borrow funds, and therefore spending decreases. And when spending decreases, the theory is that this can slow down economic growth and inflation. Secondly, by changing government spending and taxation. This is because to maintain a strong economy, the federal government seeks to accomplish 3 policy goals, which are stable prices, full employment, and economic growth. In addition to these 3 policy goals, the federal government has other objectives to maintain sound economic policy. Its main lever is to reduce government spending, which restores confidence in its ability to reduce debt and generate optimism among the public about the duration of high inflation. The third risk is do actions that boost the supply of goods and services. The most popular idea is reserving a portion of Australian gas and other commodities for domestic use and boosting immigration. Reserving a portion of Australian East Coast gas for use in Australia would help decouple Australia's East Coast gas prices from sky-high international prices, as has happened in Western Australia. Lastly, do actions that directly restrain prices. The most popular idea for directly restraining prices was increased subsidies for childcare. It could also boost the supply of workers who had previously been prevented from working by unaffordable childcare. Other ideas that would directly restrain some prices included pushing for below-inflation wage rises in the Fair Work Commission and extending the 6-month car input excise due to expire. However, the Reserve Bank should stop targeting inflation and instead target the rate of growth in national spending, an idea he will be putting to the independent review of its operations.
So let's move on to the types of unemployment. In Australia, we had discovered 3 main types of unemployment that have occurred in Australia. One of them is cyclical unemployment. So it was a very common if the other country had facing the unemployment too. So the cyclical unemployment was changes in economic growth over the business cycle. To more understand, for example, the business who are facing to reduce the demand may also reduce their workforce. For example, maybe by terminating the existing employees or maybe using the fewer new employees. But nowadays, due to the advanced technology, many businesses are also using the fewer employees since the job can be automated by using the machine. So it will be difficult to get a job. Next is structural unemployment. It will occur when there is an issue that has available jobs and people are looking for it. Unfortunately, the available jobs may require different skill, but it will typically last longer for this type of unemployment due to workers to build up the new skill or need to move to different areas that fits with their qualification. This type of unemployment also can have issues too with the advanced technology who are more skillful. Lastly is a frictional unemployment. It happens when people enter or exit the labor force, or known as change occupation, or transition between jobs in the labor market. However, finding a job may take some time and effort because people may not find a job immediately. So because of that, job seeker might face a short time of unemployment due to opportunities not immediately matched with them. However, there are some types of unemployment that are important to consider too, such as hidden unemployment, technological unemployment, and seasonal unemployment. Hidden can occur when people not count as unemployed but not recognized in the formal statistic, but still have the chance to get employed.
Now I will discuss about unemployment data in Australia from 2014 to 2023. The graph and table above indicate a 2014 to 2015 decrease from 6.08% to 6.05%. Growth and unemployment are related. High economic activity requires more people to generate more products and services. Australian unemployment fell from 2014 to 2019. The economy survived a record sequence of Reserve Bank interest rate hikes because the labour market added jobs and employees work longer hours. Unfortunately, the unemployment rate will grow 1.3% in 2020. In the year 2021, 2022 and 2023, the unemployment rate slowly decreased from 5.11% to 3.69%. First thing first, I would like to tell you what is unemployment. Unemployment occurs when a job seeker fails to find work. The first unemployment issue is population increase. Population growth raises employment demand. However, all citizens cannot be employed. Since supply exceeds demand, unemployment is unavoidable. When overpopulation occurs, people want to go work but unable to find a job, which will increase. This will be called unemployment resulting from a labour shortage. The greater the unemployment rate, the worse it has an effect on the economy. As Australia's unemployment rate has steadily risen from 5.16% in 2019, the government must continue to use microeconomic measures to offset these negative consequences and maintain economic development. Next, I will talk about clearing the market. Classical economic theory states that every market, including labour market, clears when supply and demand are equal. Structural employment, which occurs when labour market limitations cause a shortage of jobs, lasts longer on average. Lastly, I will talk about relatively strong economic performance. During global financial crisis, Australia did not go through a significant economic slowdown or a financial crisis. Variety of variables that contributed to the comparatively excellent performance of Australia's economic and financial system during the global financial crisis, in comparison to those of other nations. Firstly, because of high profitability of domestic lending. Furthermore, large resources export to China, whose economy recovered quickly following the first shock of the Great Financial Crisis. As an added bonus, I'd like to elaborate on the causes of the unemployment crisis. This article focuses on three potential explanations. The high rate interest rate is the primary concern. When banks rise interest rate, it makes borrowing money more expensive. Because of this, companies cannot afford to keep up with inflationary lending trend. The Australian Bureau of Statistics announced on last Thursday that unemployment rose by 21,900 people after 11,500 jobs were lost in January. Next, technological advancement and lack of skills. Accounting and billing have largely benefited from technological improvement and no longer require expensive human involvement. Automation and AI have helped companies to save human resources costs. Last but not least, recession or sluggish economic growth. It's possible that the pace of economic growth will be lower than expected, and it's also possible that the economy won't produce enough employment. If there is no production, there will be no new employment generated, and there will be no need to hire any new employees. Recessions impact Australia differently.
Next, for the effect of unemployment. Firstly, the effect of unemployment is may reduce the purchasing power. It's because due to not having any jobs and source of income, people will lower their purchasing power, so they will be limited in their needs and wants. It can affect overall demands for goods and service. Because of that, they also may change their spending habits. Clearly, the government revenue will decrease is because the people who are unemployed cannot afford to pay the taxes. Because of that, the government income will decrease. But due to that, the government needs to spend their welfare payment for them to get the necessities. So it also will be costly for the government spending to get social welfare for them. And lastly, hindering economic growth, it can affect economic growth due to social problems. For example, if they don't have any jobs, they will get involved in riots or robbery to get money to survive in their life. It also can increase relative poverty. It shows that they may need government support since they need to suffer in their basic needs because of do not have any jobs. So next one is the policies to curb the unemployment problem. So there are demand side and supply side for the reduce the unemployment. So for the demand side, it is a monetary and fiscal policy. For the monetary policy, it is always by lowering rates. It aims at consumer demand and economic growth. People will spend money and make quality investment when borrowing money is cheaper. Then the demand will increase and the unemployment will decrease. Next, fiscal policy by reducing the taxes and increasing the spending of the government. By reducing the taxes, encourage consumer to consume more and increase the aggregate income. Due to that, the demand for workers will rise if the business create more.
Next, statistic inflation data between Australia and Malaysia. First, for Malaysia, inflation data 2.1% in 2014. Based on the year 2017, the inflation rate is really highest in Malaysia, which is 3.87%. After 2015 and 2016, it's a little bit changed, like 0.01%. As Malaysia tried to reduce inflation rate by fuel subsidies and price regulation, decrease inflation. Unfortunately, the inflation suddenly dropped to negative in the year 2020, which is negative 1.14%. Reduced government expenditure, stock market collapse, household savings, and tighter monetary policy, which is higher interest rate, caused this transition. Meanwhile, in Australia, it shows the annual inflation rate in Australia in 2014 is 2.49%. The trend declined to 1.28% in the year of 2016, before improving by 0.72% in the year 2017. In other times, the inflation rate in Australia suddenly dropped to 1.91% in 2018, 1.59% in 2016, but the differences of the inflation rate is not large compared to Malaysia. Jumped 0.87% from 2020 to a height of 6.62% in 2022, which caused a lot of increase in the rate of inflation during that term. The annual inflation rate decreased back by 1.27% in 2023, which is 5.35%. Now I will analyze the statistic between Australia and Malaysia unemployment data. According to this graph, it shows the annual unemployment rate in Australia was recorded at 6.05% in 2015, which is slightly in decrease of 2.20% from 2014, which is 5.66%, while at the 2016 annual rate decreased significantly to the highest rate, 6.46% in Australia during 2020. Australia's unemployment rate has increased in 2020 due to the coronavirus outbreak. It is also a very similar situation to occurring in Malaysia when, in 2019, the rate is slightly increased from 3.3% to 4.45%. Since 2020, a coronavirus pandemic has killed 1,000 persons worldwide, raising unemployment rate in both nations. The government has closed practically all nations, including Malaysia and Australia, to stop the spread of this illness. To save expenses and preserve stability during the pandemic, several organizations had to lay off workers. Based on the 2020, 2021 and 2023, the unemployment rate in Australia and Malaysia slightly decreased.
So for the conclusion, we can conclude that Australia is the best country with the best economic growth. The unemployment rate has steadily risen from 5.16% in 2019. By the newest update, the unemployment rate in Australia is 3.6% in April 2023. Based on the year 2021 and 2022, the unemployment rate in Australia slightly decreased. Looking at more detail, the highest rate in Australia, which is 6.46% in 2020, since it was the pandemic COVID-19, and that time was the highest rate unemployment in Australia. Then there are the comparison between Malaysia and Australia on inflation rate and unemployment rate throughout the year based on the graph that we have attached together. And not forget about the inflation rate also in Australia has been decreased in 2023 when it fell 1.27%, which is 5.35%. Before this, in 2014, the inflation rate was slight increase, which are 2.49% rather than on 2013. So that's all from us about the unemployment and inflation issues in the Australia and the comparison between Malaysia. So that's all from us. Thank you for watching.